Leaving Vilgax aside, Albedo is probably the coolest long-term Ben 10 villain throughout the middle three shows. The evil twin character gains tremendous depth almost instantly, and becomes one of Ben's toughest foes to defeat in his conniving genius and anger-fueled strength. He presents a mirrored form of Ben, allowing Ben to go one-on-one against some of his own transformations. But where did Albedo come from? What are his powers exactly, and why is he such a cool character? Well, I'm A.S.K, and let's examine the timeline of Albedo throughout the Prime continuity together, and discover what makes this villain truly remarkable. So why don't we go through this chronologically, starting back where it all started, at the beginning.
Sometimes I wonder why
Albedo's story begins on Galvan Prime. Like Galvan himself, Albedo was the right-hand assistant of Azimuth, creator of the Omnitrix. He first interacts with Ben after the 10-year-old version travels to Galvan Prime to fix the malfunctioning Omnitrix. The evil and incomplete galvanic mechamorph malware kidnaps Albedo to build an incomplete helix for him and make him as good and potentially better than the rest of his species. Ben and the crew eventually defeat malware by encasing him in Diamond Head's crystals and freeing Albedo from his hostage situation. In his flashback, he was an ally of Ben and was very loyal to Azimuth, even calling him the first thinker, and fighting for him when malware approached. Little did Ben know that he just helped free Galvan, who would cause nothing but headaches for his future. That's all flashbacks. The real first time we see Albedo on screen is technically 5 years later, in Alien Force's Good Copy, Bad Copy. Here, we are introduced to Albedo, not as a Galvan, but as a carbon copy of Ben, minus the jovial voice acting. After Gwen and Kevin discover both in a comedic fashion, Albedo claims to need the Omnitrix to fix it for Ben. But after a big fight, it is discovered that he built an alternate Omnitrix because he didn't think Ben was worthy of being the Omnitrix bearer after he quote-unquote created it. However, this is also yet to be disproven. He needs Ben's Omnitrix because the linkage between the two watches is what locked Albedo into a human form, and specifically a Ben form. I guess the pants and jacket came along with the DNA. After the Omnitrices link and stick together, the energy formed causes Albedo's appearance to overhaul, making his hair white and everything green into red. Azimuth appears after this and punishes Albedo by taking out his Omnitrix core, trapping him in his human form, and sending him to an alien prison. He vows to take revenge on Ben and the team, and demands chili fries. A lovely touch, if I do say so myself. This sets up the conflict for Final Battle. The finale of Alien Force combines Vilgax, the coolest Ben 10 villain ever, with Albedo, who is quickly rising to the top. It's sort of a Spider-Man 3 type scenario. I want to kill the Tennyson. You want to kill the Tennyson. Together, he doesn't stand a chance. After stealing Azimuth's new prototype for the Ultimatrix, Albedo discovers that he can't use it to turn back to his Galvan form because there's no Galvan DNA sample present in the roster. Isn't that tough luck? Apparently, this comes as a result of the Ultimatrix being linked to the recalibrated Alien Force Omnitrix that Ben wears, which doesn't include gray matter in the selection. Instead, he has the brain crab. Albedo naturally teams up with Vilgax, who promises that he doesn't want the Omnitrix, but will team up with Albedo to destroy Ben, who has caused them tremendous issues up to this point. Albedo fights Gwen and Kevin, defeating both of them using Diamond Head and Swampfire, and holding them hostage to lure Ben into a trap. Ben follows through to save his friends and discovers the new Ultimate function, which is first showcased here with Ultimate Humongosaur. Bro, this was totally creepy as a kid, and still haunting to see Humongosaur with red eyes taunting Ben, and actually kicking his ass because the Ultimate form is like 10 times stronger than the original. After he easily defeats Ben in the fight, Ben surrenders the Omnitrix to Vilgax, who holds Gwen and Kevin hostage. Vilgax holds the Omnitrix high into the air, but breaks his promise to give the Omnitrix to Albedo so he can free himself of the human form. Vilgax uses the Omnitrix to power his entire army into Ben's transformations, and totally double-crosses Albedo. Vilgax's Humongosaur army of bioids trash Albedo and jail him on Vilgax's ship. Ben eventually blows up the Omnitrix, sending Vilgax flying, and intimidates Albedo into giving him the Ultimatrix in order to free him from Vilgax. Ben uses his new powers to crash Vilgax's ship and escape using Ultimate Swampfire, leaving Vilgax's fate uncertain. This marks the end of Alien Force, but not the end of Albedo, who made a quick getaway during the final battle. We see Albedo again in Ultimate Aliens Double or Nothing. Ben and the crew discover a live show called Ben 10 Live, which stars a lookalike Ben and 3 of his aliens, Swampfire, Big Chill, and Humongosaur. The Ben 10 doppelganger is actually Albedo, who after being stranded on Earth from Vilgax's ship crashing, needed some money to survive, and, well, being a Ben 10 lookalike, decided to steal his face and make bank off this lucrative venture. After the team defeat Albedo and his 3 alien phonies, they try to stop him from activating a doomsday bomb that intends to transform every living being on Earth into a lookalike of Ben as some sort of cruel vengeance on Albedo's part. This is actually not the truth, as Albedo explains that the bomb was only intended to turn him back into his Galvan form. Due to Ben's interference with the Ultimatrix, Albedo cannot permanently stay in his gray matter form and is still stuck as a Ben lookalike. He can now transform into all of Ben's aliens and does so to Wrath in an attempt to kick Ben's ass once again. He of course fails because Ultimate Echo Echo was there and did what Ultimate Echo Echo does, be a badass. At this this point, Albedo can transform to Ben's aliens, and also to his Galvan form, but only very temporarily before reverting back to human. The final time we see him in Ultimate Alien is the episode Night of the Living Nightmare. Here, Albedo attempts to steal the Ultimatrix from Ben by attaching a freaky Dream Eater alien to his face, which is a creature that traps the host in a nightmare while it feeds on its brain chemicals. After an episode involving Ben facing off every villain and ally he knows in a freakish nightmare, he defeats Albedo in the dream by seeing through his envious attitude. Albedo trips through to Ben's messy room and accidentally drops the Dream Eater on his own face, locking him in a nightmare where Ben's aliens will all have their way with him. Sounds like a pretty fitting ending to me. Moving on to Omniverse's ultimate heist, as Albedo breaks out of the plumber prison and manages to acquire a stabilizer device which makes it easier to control his faulty watch. Now he can transform with greater ease, like Ben can. With the help of Kyber, he disguises himself as Ben, which, I mean, isn't super hard to do for him, and goes on the hunt for this crystal that could be the key to fixing his Omnitrix and granting him a huge leg up. Trying to take this from Inspector 13, great callback by the way, Albedo pretends to be Ben and tricks Rook and Argid to help him steal it. Once he has the crystal, he quickly betrays Rook and Argid and transforms into some old Ultimate Alien forms again to fight real Ben. This is sick. Action ensues until Albedo is defeated by Ben and quickly retrieved by Kyber's ship, which takes him before plumbers can get their hands on him. Albedo has now come full circle, because the stabilizer device gives him the ability to transform back to his Galvan form at will without the glitches, as well as evolving into Ultimate Albedo, a supercharged hyper-evolved brainiac with a giant brain sticking out of everywhere. The next time we see him is in a fistful of brains, as Ultimate Albedo and Kyber lure Ben into a different planet, where Kyber unleashes every Nemetrix predator onto Ben, who is on the run, just trying to survive. After transforming into Astrodactyl and discovering the ship in the sky, Ultimate Albedo has a big fight with Ben, who at first stands no chance against Albedo's new intellect and transforming ability. After a while, Feedback defeats him, but Kyber comes back into the picture, with Azimuth held hostage. Kyber and Albedo hook Azimuth up to a brain drain machine and take all of his smarts away in a torturous move. Ben and the gang try to help Azimuth, but eventually all of his brains are transferred into a green orb that Ben tries to keep safe and away from evil hands. Azimuth's brain communicates to Ben how to fix all this, while the gang try to navigate back to Earth in one piece while fighting off the bad guys. Azimuth unlocks Pesky Dust for Ben, defeating Kyber, but Ultimate Albedo makes a getaway during the battle on Earth. Damn, this Galvan is good at escaping in times of crisis. They discover him later as he tries to use his vast intellect to construct a brand new universe, Alien X style, but in his own sick image, the way he intends. Azimuth's dumb, brainless body once again helps Ben unlock a new alien, Atomics, who blows Albedo out of the sky. Azimuth's brains are returned to him, and he locks Albedo back into not only the Ben form, but the 10-year-old Ben form. The cruelest punishment. You gotta love the irony. Now it's over, right? Albedo is done with the vengeance? Well, nope. We do see him one more time in the episode And Then There Were None, as we see a very minute cameo of Albedo as he teams up with the other evil Bens to defeat Prime and No Watch Ben. But then is promptly defeated by the good Bens and sent back to his own dimension. Is that it? Apparently not! One final appearance of Albedo did exist in the episode Vilgax Attacks. After Ben travels to Galvan Prime to ask Azimuth to remove Skirt the Slambiot, Vilgax and Albedo show up and steal the remains of malware that were in the Galvan Museum. It's crazy to see these two team up at all after what happened in Alien Force, and especially as a little 10-year-old version of Ben. I don't know, it just kinda looks funny to me to see Vilgax next to his little kid. Vilgax wears malware like a bodysuit and transforms into Malyax. Meanwhile, Albedo and Azimuth have an altercation which ends with Azimuth disabling Albedo's Omnitrix. Ben has trouble fighting Malyax, but eventually defeats him and sends a rockified version of his body floating through space. Albedo is left to clean up the mess he created, like a good little doppelganger. In a way, Albedo's story ended right where it began, on Galvan Prime, both in the beginning and in the end, and with malware playing a key role both in the beginning and in the end. As a villain, Albedo harps on a lot of evil tropes in his introduction, but quickly transforms to a much deeper and more interesting character. Certainly by Omniverse's time, Albedo's intentions and ambitions are well defined, and he plays a much more important role. His presence in Ben 10 allowed for a lot of interesting fight scenes between Ben and his own aliens, and certainly added some comedic elements into a more evil cast of villains. I really liked Albedo's character and still regard him as one of the top 3 in Ben 10 history. What do you think? Do you like Albedo as a character, or is he not your thing? Which show handled this portrayal the best in your eyes? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and be sure to like and subscribe to the channel to support my work. The socials are all linked below for you to follow. And with all that said, I'll see you guys in the next one.